Every picture you've probably ever seen depicting a low vision or a visual impairment is probably wrong. And it can lead you to make some very misleading assumptions about what your loved one or your colleague or whoever it is in your life that has these conditions might be going through. So today we're going to debunk some of the misleading nature of these images and maybe reframe the way that we think about vision loss and loss of visual acuity so that you can have a deeper understanding of what your loved ones might be going through. Low vision is a term, and it's a term, I joke with optometrists that it's often a term that is a catch-all for anybody who doesn't have perfectly high vision. So if your vision is weird or kind of even the slightest bit unusual, you may find yourself in categorized as low vision. Low vision is largely a legal definition, meaning that your best corrected visual acuity is 20/70 or worse, and or your visual field is less than a certain number of degrees. So that's the official definition of low vision. Now, the reality is, if you have a little bit more than low vision, that doesn't mean that your life is wonderful and that your vision is perfect. So let's talk more about the conditions and the simulations of the conditions rather than kind of splitting hairs about what is and is not categorized as low vision officially.
How is low vision different from the way it's shown?
If you look at images depicting things like macular degeneration, things like diabetic retinopathy, things like hemianopia, these images are extraordinarily misleading for two reasons. The first reason is that they take a filter of some sort and apply it to a photograph. Now, if you've ever noticed a photograph or a TV, the resolution on a photograph or a television is edge-to-edge clarity. So in the top right and the top left and the very center, the clarity on a TV or a photograph is all the same. Now, your vision doesn't work this way, and you may or may not have noticed this, but if you're looking straight ahead, you can see exactly what you're looking at very clearly, but as you're looking there, if you are trying to identify something over further away while you're looking straight ahead, you'll notice very quickly that you don't have much effective, clear vision as you move away from the center of your vision. So the central 1 to 2 degrees of your vision is very high clarity, and then it very quickly tapers down to be very, very insensitive from an acuity standpoint. Now, this external part, this non-central part of your vision does play a very important role in that it detects motion and contrast very well. So what will happen is if you are looking at the screen and something drops or something falls or something moves in this area, you will detect it. But if you want to see actually what's going on, you would need to turn your eyes, turn your head, and look over there and direct your clear vision to that point. Now, why am I telling you all this? Is because when you look at a depiction of low vision on a photograph, they'll take a crystal clear photograph and put a bunch of black dots in the photograph. And what'll happen is you would think that those black dots are just missing spots, and if I wanted to, I could just look around and bypass my low vision condition because everywhere else is clear. But that's not actually how it works, is when the person moves their eyes, that vision loss goes with them everywhere their eyes move, and they can't ever see in that spot that's missing. Now, to talk more about that, let's talk about the spot itself. Now, the only way that you would actually experience a black or a darkened image in your sight is if something actually existed before the retina. So if you had a big chunk of something floating in your eye, like in the liquid of your eyeball, that's really the only circumstance that you would visually see a black spot in your vision. Now, your brain is super clever. The retina is the back of the eyeball, and everything that you see comes in through the eye and is broadcast to the back of the retina. The back of the retina all gets condensed and sent down the optic nerve to the visual cortex, which is in the back of your brain. Now, what happens is if there's missing information sent in the optic nerve, your brain makes the best with the information it does have and fills in the difference. Now, there's a test that we do. It's more or less just a thing to kind of show you this effect. It's called the Physiological Blind Spot Test. So what's interesting is where your retina where the optic nerve plugs into the retina, you have a blind spot in your vision. Now, it's a blind spot that unless you cognitively know to look for it, you can't see it. But this spot exists in each of your eyes, and there's a test that you can do to actually show yourself where this spot exists. The image that you see on the screen is two dots. One is a blue dot on a light border. The other's a light dot on a blue background. And if you close your left eye and look at the left dot with your right eye, you'll find there's a distance. So the blind spot in your eye is about 15 degrees off of where you focus. So about 15 degrees away, depending on your screen size, it can be a great deal of difference. But if your screen size is about 20 inches, a standard kind of monitor, the distance you're going to be is about a foot if you're looking at the video on full screen. But adjust the distance, because I promise you this blind spot doesn't exist, and if you can't see it, it's because you're not at the right distance to be able to see it. Now, what you'll notice is that when you do find that right distance, the light dot on the right side completely disappears. The first time you see it, or don't see it, you'll recognize how pervasive and how confusing vision loss can be, because there's no way to describe this physiological blind spot other than to describe it as nothing. So it's basically your brain fills in the space where you're blind with whatever information makes sense. So it's almost like a tool in the photo editing software. If you use like artificial intelligence and say, hey, fill that in with what seems to make sense based on the data around it, that's what your brain is doing. Now, what that looks like from the patient's perspective is they don't actually perceive, for the most part, that they have any kind of vision issue, especially with peripheral field loss. So they will not notice. They could lose half of their vision. They could lose 95% of their vision and not even notice, because the brain just kind of fills in the difference.
Can your eyes be tricked into seeing things when they're not?
Now, there's another condition that makes people feel like they are insane that I want to talk about just a little bit. It's called Charles Bonnet Syndrome. And if you've ever heard of like when somebody loses a limb, if they lose an arm or a leg, they'll have what's called phantom limb syndrome, where they feel their leg as if it's there, because the nerves, even though the nerves are severed, they still have the nerves and they're still used to getting information from those nerves. So the patient will feel like they have a pain in their leg, but their leg isn't even there. Or they'll have it in their arm and their arm isn't even there. Now, Charles Bonnet Syndrome is this phenomenon where your visual cortex, because it's not really getting the information that it's used to getting, it will create images in your blind area. And those images can seem like apparitions. They can seem like all kinds of stuff. So it is important to be aware that Charles Bonnet Syndrome exists, and that you're not just like crazy, seeing ghosts, seeing these apparitions, seeing all kinds of wild stuff that you're not aware of. So this is the kind of visual equivalent of the phantom limb syndrome when you do have a low vision condition. So you're not crazy.